Hello out there, and in front of you today is a Ganzo-made Firebird designed model F7562-BK. And before we get into the particulars of this knife, I want to just quickly address and hopefully clarify the Ganzo Firebird name change transition sort of thing. Alright, so as you can see on the box here, it says made by Ganzo and designed by Firebird. All right, and so I, for one, was sort of curious if that meant that it was like a brand extension or like an upgraded line that Ganzo was producing that they wanted to call Firebird, because I'd seen the Firebird logo on a couple knives, but I hadn't seen the name Firebird until I got this one. So they started printing the word Firebird underneath this logo, and on the other side of the knife it says made by Ganzo. And again, as you can see, instead of the G in front of the serial number, it is an F. But then I got another new Ganzo Firebird, and I'll just flash that really quickly on camera. It's sort of a Spyderco Delica lookalike, pretty interesting one. But on the side of the box, it says, with a sticker, Ganzo Knives will use the new logo. Thank you for continuous trust in Ganzo products. So it seems that it is just a complete change of name, and maybe they're going to keep the Ganzo name for other tools and other kinds of products, and Firebird will be their knife line. I'm not sure. It doesn't change the quality of the product. It doesn't change what they're putting out. It's just a difference in what they're calling it, which is perfectly fine for me, and I actually really like this logo. I think it's a pretty good look. So that's what we have. We have the Firebird made by Ganzo. And this knife, if you are not familiar with this knife, the look of it at least, it does somewhat emulate this Benchmade 940. But the thing that really excited me about the Ganzo, or Firebird, and I'll use that term interchangeably, at least until I get used to the change. The thing that really excited me about this is that, as you can see, there is a design similarity, but the dimensions are really different. We have a much longer knife overall with the Ganzo, and then the height of the knife, especially the blade and the handle, like very, very different. So it feels completely different in the hand, and it feels a whole lot more substantial. And so for a user knife, which is exactly as I intended this to be, something that's right around the $20 price range, even less than that, this is a really, really good size, because you want something that's going to fill the hand pretty well. All right, and so talking about the dimensions, we have about a 3.5-inch blade length, which is really nice and functional 440C, which I will talk about in just a second. And then here is our weight, which comes in right at 4.49 ounces, just under 4.5 ounces. So not a very light knife, but for the size, certainly not a heavy one in hand. All right, but let's talk about 440C. All right, I might go on a bit of a tangent here, but I just want to address the steel, because over the past few Ganzos that I've had, I've been talking about how Ganzo does such a good job with 440C. And I've said that before with a Benchmade knife and a few other knives that I've had, either on camera or not, that had 440C, and I've always said, wow, they did a really good job with the steel. And I've come to the realization, guys, that it's not necessarily a company doing a good job with a heat treat and a grind. It's just a good steel. And it's a steel that I think has been shortchanged and just not credited enough for how good it actually is. What I've noticed just in all of the Ganzos and all the other knives that I've had with it, it's just always pretty solid. I like it a lot. I really like it a lot as a user steel. And is it going to be as good as 154cm or S30V? Certainly not. No, it's still a budget steel, and it can be had at a it can be had at a very, very high value. But if you were going to ask me if I wanted this steel or 8CR13 MOV or AUS 8, in a heartbeat, I would take this. I would take this over those without a doubt. The quality of the corrosion resistance is extremely high, and the sharpness and the edge retention is better, in my opinion and in my experience, than either of those two steels. So when you're talking about value with these knives, people say, oh, it has 440C, and sometimes, again, they say, well, that's just a cheap steel, but it's a pretty darn good steel. And I'm going to change the way that I talk about it, because, my feelings have certainly progressed to, oh, well, it's not just Ganzo doing a good job. This is just a good quality material. All right, so really happy with that. And again, as you can probably guess, the way that this one functions is very top notch, extremely sharp out of the box, has held its edge really well. I've been beating this one up. This has been my new beater, attacking a ton of boxes with it and stuff, and have barely had to touch it up. So again, just really happy with the steel. And again, as we know with the 940, we have a very good blade shape and design for utility tasks as well. All right, and let's get into the biggest focus, for me at least, whenever I get a Ganzo with an axis lock. It is the locking mechanism, because I've had some ups and downs with it so far, and yeah, definitely wanted to address that, and that was the focus for me. Well, the good news is that this one is great. It's extremely smooth, it opens and closes nicely, and it does not stick, and it is not too stiff. So to actuate and to close the knife, it's hard for me to do on camera. Try to do a couple times, but yeah, it is pretty smooth. It's not going to free drop, but you could open and close this knife a whole lot without getting sore fingers, which is one of those things that I noticed from the other Ganzos, is that, you know, having to really press hard to disengage the lock made it a little less fun to play with, but this one is a lot of fun to play with. Other really good things of quality, as we head on back, you can see the open frame construction and all of this milling on the liners. So this could easily be a 5+ ounce knife if that attention wasn't placed on cutting the weight with the liners. All right, and this is a dirty knife because it has been used a lot, so it does need to be clean, but like I said, open frame construction does help that. We do have a 2-position tip-up only pocket clip. Relatively nice carry with this too. I mean, it's not an extremely deep carry, but with a knife of this size, I don't really necessarily want it to be. I want to be able to get a good grasp on it to pull it out of the pocket. So that's really good. And then also no lanyard hole, but this standoff right here would be perfect for tying a lanyard onto if you needed to. And then cosmetically, taking a look at some of this anodizing work. Yeah, the hardware is just really nice. It looks good. Looks pretty darn good. All right. I talked about the action. Very good. Centering is slightly off. Maybe a little bit more than slightly. Yeah, it's off to the side, but not a huge issue with me. And part of that is because the grind is a little bit uneven, but it's not terrible, but it's not great. All right, so blade is not ground perfectly even, but you know, that's probably the cause of a lot of that centering. As far as lockup goes, no up and down, no side to side. And when it comes to the lockup itself and the pivot, it looks like this has a bushed pivot and not just a male and female screw. All right, so with the bush pivot, you have like a center, basically like a standoff type of thing that has 2 male parts that screw in. And that's what it seems to be on this knife. The clip side here has a really heavily Loctited screw that is almost impossible to adjust, and so it makes it hard to take the knife apart. This side, the presentation side, does have the adjustable side. So what tends to happen, at least in my experience, is over time, a little bit of side-to-side play develops. At least, you know, I've seen that in my paramilitary 2s, but nothing from that yet. So this has just been really great. Again, haven't taken this knife apart yet though, so I'm not sure how much of a pain that is going to be when that time comes, but usually just like a hairdryer or a little bit of heat or something gets rid of that Loctite and makes it easier to take apart. But we will see when the time comes, and if a follow-up is needed, I will give it to you. All right, and then getting into the ergonomics, which is another big win, and as you've probably heard already, there are quite a few wins with this knife. The ergonomics on this one are great. All right, it just feels really nice in the hand because of the size and how full it is. It fills the hand nicely. We have some jimping, and it's very functional jimping. Although it's not on the spine of the blade, it is right here on the scales and the liners. Not sharp, but pretty good and grippy. And while you don't have any like multiple configurations for grip, because it's basically one long handle with no like choil or anything, there are a number of different ways that you could choke up comfortably and make this a a good knife to hold in hand and use pretty heavily. All right, one thing I do want to mention ergonomically with the G10 is the G10, first of all, is pretty good and grippy. It's basically tenacious, Spyderco tenacious grade. If you've had a tenacious, it feels pretty much the same as that. But these little green inserts here, I'm not sure what they're for. All right. And the reason for that is because on this side of the knife, they're completely flush. All right. And so it's only for show. They add no traction. I mean, you can't even feel that they're there because they are so flush with the scale. Maybe you can see that. But then on the other side, and gosh, maybe you can see that front one is extended, and it does provide actually a little bit of texture and grip. So I'm not sure what the intention was. I'm not sure if it was something that was to be like a cosmetic look or if it was something that was for texture. Either way, it is different one side to the other and is more cosmetic for that reason. But a cool little touch. I think it's a pretty attractive knife. And overall, guys, I'm really happy with this one. I've really enjoyed the past few Ganzos that I've gotten, and every one that I've gotten the past 2 or 3 has been better than the last. And this one is definitely my favorite one ever. So again, I will bring that box back in just so you can get that serial number, F7562-BK. It does come in a couple different color varieties. I think there's a green G10 and an orange G10 that you can get, and they still have the blue anodized hardware. All right, so really happy with this offering from Ganzo. Love the steel, love the knife overall, and I'm really happy to keep using it. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, any other experiences that you've had with this knife, let me know down below, guys. Love hearing from you. Best part of the channel is the communication with you guys, so I look forward to that all the time. And yeah, look forward to talking with you again soon. Have a good one, and take care.